Welcome, Space Cadets. In this episode, we're going to be starting a game of Distant Worlds 2. Now, I'll do the quick and dirty, basically, what the minimum you can do to actually sort of get into a game, how fast that can actually be, and then I'll go through and explain everything ad infinitum. So it's going to be sort of one of these things where for a minute or so, we're going to be just going through how to do it quickly, and then I'll go through and explain actually everything. So to get into the game very, very quickly, it's basically start a new game, next, start game. There we go. You don't need to do anything else. You can just basically go with the defaults and you'll end up in the middle of a game. So that's the quickest way through. By the way, if you do make changes and you actually find a setting that you do like, or like difficulty levels, whatever else it might be, and so this one we've actually come in as the day autocracy, which is one of the new players. If we just go and let's get started, we're just then going to sort of start off right in the middle here. So there we go. So that's going to be the home world for our particular start. We're going to be sort of starting in pre-warp. It then just gives us a bit of a storyline as to what we have to then go and do, etc., 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 and we're into the actual game. Now, one thing you will probably actually end up having in the game is that you will end up having a tour that will come up and start to explain everything. I would strongly suggest you actually have a look through that. If at any point you turn the tour off and you want to see it again, there's two different ways you can do that. One way you can do it is to just go across to any of the screens, click on them, and then click on the launcher tour of your empire. It will then just go through how to then go through. So you'll probably get to the point where you're thinking, oh yeah, I know it all. I'm just going to disable all the tours. Now I'm going to turn these on as we do it. I'm just going to disable them for now anyway. But the first thing you'll see will be a tour, and I would suggest if it's your first game, do it. If you also get a bit lost with something, just do what I just did then. Just look for this little question mark and in you go. Anyway, let's go back to the start and we'll get started with all of the different nitty gritty, all the things you maybe should look at, all the finer points, I guess, and how you may want to construct this game to suit your play style. So we're just going to go back out. I'm just going to dismiss that one, press escape, and we'll exit back to the main menu. Now I have reset the game, so I'm now in the defaults. You can see that you possibly can see there's sort of like banding that's running through here. There's certain things that aren't very comfortable, I guess, with the way it sort of does look, and that's because this has been set for like a minimum requirement. So by default, it actually has sort of like this sort of standard definition with the way that the graphics are then done. And if your computer is up to it, I would strongly suggest that you turn it to high definition. And so you do that just by going into settings. And this is actually the settings in through here where you can go and change, for example, things like, it'll start at the top through here, but you can change your key maps, your key mappings if you want them. So you've got like a whole heap of different sort of key mappings in the game. Also, it can be useful to actually have a bit of a look through this to see if what does what. The game will tell you anyway, but it is something that is actually quite useful. So anyway, that's the key mappings back in through there. And there's a lot of things you can change in here if you don't like certain things, but I'm just going to leave it on the defaults for now, except for one thing, which is under the display. And back through here, I'm going to change the standard range rendering. I'm going to click on that one and change it to high dynamic range rendering. So that's one thing I'm going to do, just to get rid of the banding, because the banding annoys me. So bang, done, and I'm just going to apply it. Now, there's nothing else really in here that we have to change. You can change the color scheme of the user interface, things like that, but just have a bit of a look. I won't go through what every single little thing actually here is. Most things you just leave on default. I have turned the music down slightly, but anyway, I'll apply that. And now we no longer see the banding. So we've now got high definition display, so HDR display, coming through on the actual monitor. But if you do have troubles, then just leave it on standard. So that will be actually okay. By the way, if you do change some of the graphic settings, like if you do go back into settings and change, for example, if your DirectX is not working properly, you may want to try one of these other rendering formats, rendering modes. If you do actually select them, and I won't do it here, but if we just cancel that one, if you do change it, you do have to actually exit out of the game and then come back into the game. So just be aware of that as well. It should tell you at some point in its development, but at the moment it doesn't tell you that. But that is one thing. If you are having troubles with DirectX and need to go to one of the Vulkan modes, then you can actually do that. I think it's preferable to stay with the DirectX, but if it's not working for you, try the other modes. but go out before you then reopen the game. I was making that mistake when I was testing some of the things. So I sort of know from first hand that I was doing the wrong thing because I wasn't actually restarting the game. But I think eventually they are going to have like a little message come up and tell you to restart, but not at this point in time. I'm using version 1.1.2.3, and I think it's important that you sort of know what version I'm using for doing this one, because the game will change again a lot over the next months. You know, like it's under constant development. So anyway, that's that was just the first little bit. The next thing we're going to talk about is actually getting into a new game and what everything actually means. So we start a new game back in through here. Now, as I say, I've set these to the defaults, and so we are now just sort of playing with default settings. Now, right off the bat, if you see an orange border around a setting, it'll be the number of stars usually. That will indicate that there's a potential issue with your setup that may not be able to cope with that many stars. And so if I hover over this one, you can see your system has 10 CPU cores and 64 gig of RAM. Warning, 2,000 stars may cause performance issues in the late game on your system. Recommended to have 12 CPU cores and 24 gigabytes of RAM. So I've got enough RAM, I just don't have enough cores. I'm 2 cores off. So I would probably still actually err on that side. If I did want to play with 2,000 stars, I would go that way. Now, let's start with the actual random seed again. This is just a number here, which is just a random seed for your game. So you can actually share that with other people. It will still be different unless they have every single setting exactly the same. So that's at this point in time, you can't actually save your startup settings. Like they're not sort of saved anywhere at this point in time, but that may come as well in the future. I think they're thinking about doing that at some stage. Galaxy shapes, let's just talk about what these are and how they impact the game. Now, if you start to sort of click on these, you will see some changes, the way that they sort of do work. But I'll go through and explain exactly what each one of these actually is. So the default is just the spiral galaxy, the 2-arm spiral galaxy. Now it just looks like a random placement of stars. To actually see what these look like in detail, make it go to 2,000 stars and maybe go to the 10 by 10, actually maybe the 8 by 8. That way you can sort of have a bit more of a look, and go to dense nebulas. And that way you should start to see patterning. It's still a bit hard to see that. If I go back into, say, a smaller sector, you can sort of see more of the shapes. What about this one here? Actually, you can't go that small. On 2,000 stars, you can't go back down to 4x4. But in this one here, you can sort of just make out there's like an arm that goes around, spirals in, and another arm coming back out the other way. And so that's what that one actually does. So the dense nebulas will then sort of start to define what's going on a little bit better. Now this galaxy shape in through here is just classic. So classic galaxies have a spiral shape with 2 large nebular cloud arms winding out from the center of the galaxy. And so these are essentially, you can sort of see they've got like it comes out and then forms a ring. So you've got like a ring of stars that is coming through from an arm that does come from the middle of the galaxy. This here doesn't really sort of indicate what this thing looks like. It certainly does have this outer ring with a more dense sort of core in the middle there. Again, if we sort of put these back to normal, it's hard to sort of see the definition, but there will be a lot of nebula in amongst this other area. Nebulas in the game, consider them to be sort of like in most strategy games, mountains or something where it sort of limits your movement, makes it very hard to move through. And so nebulas are very hard to move through in the game. They're really, really cool because they create choke points. So then we've got, for example, elliptical. Now, these are just a random scattering, and you can see there's holes where the nebulas actually are, but essentially it's a fairly even scattering all the way through the galaxy. This one here is just a ring with no center, so there is actually going to be scattered stars in through this side. So if you're playing on this particular galaxy style, you're going to be having neighbors on either side, but you're not going to really be having to worry too much about multiple neighbors. Whereas on one of the others, you're going to, you could be anywhere and you're going to have neighbors all over the place. So that's sort of where that one actually goes. This one is similar. This is just a ring with a dense center. So you've got like a center in through here, plus the rings on the outside here. So you've got like sort of two portions of the galaxy, which is again fairly interesting. This one here is a dual ring with no center. So you've got 2 distinct rings with nebulas between everything. So again, this makes it a fairly interesting sort of it's surprising how different the game plays with each of these actual styles. And so this one does actually have like a way of breaking through to this next ring. So you don't just have your neighbors on either side, but you also have potentially more neighbors on the inside here that you've then got to break through like a nebula ring to get to.
This one here is does the same, but with a dense core. So again, a ring of nebulas, ring of nebulas. There'll be little pockets all the way through, so there will be access between each rung. So it's fairly cool. This one here is just even clusters. Clusters is fun because you end up sort of like in very defined little areas potentially where you're fighting out for the clusters, and then you try, like this is quite big distances between each of the actual clusters. So you try to control your cluster, then go to the next cluster and go from there. So this is actually even clusters where each cluster is about the same size. This one is varied clusters where you have some large, some small, and so the clusters themselves are very much sort of spread out. This one here, I think looks like there's a nebula in the middle of that particular cluster. And so this is actually varied clusters. And then you just have irregular. These have no fixed shape or structure. And so these are also random. Now, these look very, very much like the elliptical, but have a look at the difference between this one and the distribution across the irregular with the elliptical. See how the density is higher in the middle? So it's actually more dense in the middle and then dissipates out as it sort of goes to the outside edges, whereas the irregular is just a random scattering of stars. So they're the different styles in through there. So again, just pick whichever one you want to be playing in. If you don't really care, then I would just suggest just keep it back with the spiral galaxy. Number of stars sort of makes, that's pretty self-explanatory. You can always hover over this one as well. So you can sort of like, to be honest, I find 700 stars is adequate. It's you very rarely sort of move away from a very, very small portion of the game anyway, to be honest. Like it is one of those things where you play so much of the game in a very, very small area of the galaxy, no matter what size the galaxy actually is, that it's surprising actually sort of just how much can go on in a very, very defined little area. Anyway, 700 stars is fine. Again, the nebulas, some people hate them, some people love them. I love them. If you don't like them, you can go to very sparse, where they're sort of not going to be very prevalent at all, or sparse. If we go to the irregular galaxies and we go to, say, 200 stars again, and just go to very sparse, you can see there's hardly any sort of difference. If we go to dense, we have much more like Swiss cheese sort of effect going on with the actual galaxy itself. Normal is the default back in through here, and 700 stars with the spiral galaxy. That's the actual that's the default with the 6x6 sector. So again, I really do like the nebulas because they do create such interesting choke points that you have to then sort of get your way through. If you know what faction you're going to be playing as well, you may want to actually either have them or not have them, like whether you're wanting to be actually defending choke points or want to have open access to anything that you actually like. So it's entirely up to you which way you do go there. I'll just keep it on normal for this in this particular instance, and I'll keep it on 6x6. Now this is the overall scale of the galaxy. So the 6x6 sectors, is a comfortable size. You can't actually. This is disabled. This is too sparse for 700 stars. If I go to 1,000 stars and then go to 8x8, you can see it spreads right out. Then 10x10 is really spread out. Like so, this is really, really spread out in terms of it being a galaxy. It's going to be a lot of movement required to go from system to system. So this would, for 1,000 stars, this would actually be a very, very slow game, I think. Until you sort of got like the higher level warp drives and were able to sort of move your way through the other systems. Anyway, that's it's just interesting the way that things do actually work. I'll just go back to 700 normal and on the 6x6. As I say, it's fairly comfortable that way. Next is the galaxy settings. So that's the galaxy shape. You can always go back and change any of these. It does remember whatever you've done, and it remembers it from game to game, except for one little thing, which I'll show you when we get there. There's just one aspect that if you do choose it, it won't remember it. Now I hope at some point that they put that in as well and remember the actual like where you want to be in the galaxy, because it doesn't actually do that. Now this is the overall galaxy settings. Now this is for randomly generated empires in the actual game itself, and I'll show you what this relates to now, and I'll come back and sort of go through it. I'll just sort of zip past all of this stuff. If you have this turned on, which is by default, these are the auto-generate the starting empires. These are impacted by what you do on that screen. So that's this one in through here. So start a new game. This is the galaxy settings. And so you've got, for example, the galaxy expansion. The game is designed to be done at pre-warp. And so pre-warp is something that where you essentially don't have anything. So you're just starting from scratch. You will actually be given, depending on your faction, you will be given some tech, but not very much. And so you need to sort of start just by exploring. It is the way that the game is designed, where you start with a single small colony and away you go. And so everyone is sort of going to be in that capacity. Now what the game does is it sort of takes whatever you've selected plus the next one along, and sort of have a few different factions maybe where they're a little bit more advanced than what you are. So it will then have like just a bit of a smattering of those throughout the galaxy. So pre-warp is where the game is designed. Personally, I like to go to young, and I'll just explain what these all are. So pre-warp is basically starting with a single small colony and minimal tech, and so hyperspace travel has not yet been unlocked, and so you really are stuck in your system, traveling extremely slowly under impulse drives. Until you actually unlock the hyperdrives where you can actually then go through space, it's going to be extremely slow. But this is, as I say, the game is designed to start this way. Starting will then give you an empire start with a single small colony and no ships or bases. But what it does do is it gives you essentially you've then at least got not you don't have any more tech. Like if I click on starting in through there, I'll click on each of these as we go through. This one is where you've got like a little bit more, you actually know your local system, and so you've actually got some knowledge about what's going on there. So you just got a little bit more of a head start with just what your knowledge actually is. If you go to then young and we click on that one, notice how suddenly it's flicked out to level 1 with the tech level. And so from this point forward, you can't play with a multi-colony system on a pre-warp tech level. It has to be at tech level 1 or more. And so so to go from starting, which can be pre-warp, you can't actually go into young with pre-warp. And so this is actually where you've actually got like 2 to 4 colonies and have explored the nearby systems. And so I like playing this one for my recordings because it means that I actually can show what's around me right from the very, very start. So it's a little bit of an accelerated start for me. So for me, I like to play this one if I'm recording. I prefer to play pre-warp if I am not recording and I just want to have a relaxing time. So I would probably suggest if you are going to be playing the game for the first time, play on pre-warp, but treat it as a story and don't treat it as a game. So you can, that way you can sort of just ease yourself into it. It's usually quite relaxing for most of playing Distant Worlds. It's not actually a click fest or anything like that, even though it's a real-time game. You can pause it at any point in time and just play your own way. Anyway, Young gets us to tech level 1 at least. Expanding, we've now got 7 to 8 colonies and we've explored the surrounding sectors. Mature, we have 12 to 15 colonies and have explored much of the galaxy. And so these are sort of like oldish empires. And then we have actual old empires, are well established with many colonies and high populations. Most of the galaxy has been explored. And again, you can do it for anywhere from tech level 1 onwards. Let's just go to Young, which is, as I say, the main one that I do tend to start with. And so pre-warp, sorry, if I go back to pre-warping through here, the tech level is basically the columns in the tech tree, which we'll get to in another episode. But essentially for each one of these, pre-warp means you've got none of them, or maybe 1 or 2 of them in that very first column. Tech level 0 means you've got all of the first column at that point. Tech level 1 means that you've got the first 2 columns, and then 2 is the next column along, etc., etc., etc. And so as you go through these, this is just higher and higher up through the tech level. So if you're wanting to sort of see how something works, for example, you may want to go to tech level 7 for yourself, just to see what it does, and then go back and sort of start another game. I tend to find that anything above tech level 1 or 2 becomes super unbalanced. And so I tend not to enjoy the games where they're tech level 3 or more. The game is not really geared for that, but it's there if you do want to have that sort of start. So that's where we are with that one. So as I say, from recordings, I like to do Young and level 1. So I'll just leave it on that one for now. And then we've got Galaxy Aggression backing through this side. In fact, yeah, no, we'll do that. I'll leave it on this one. The Galaxy Aggression is essentially how aggressive computer players are in the game. And so there are other factors specific to each empire, which also determine aggression levels, but this setting is a galaxy-wide value that influences all empires. So if it's on Restless, which I think is a default, it means that they're just going to be a little bit on edge with you, but you can make it unstable or chaotic. depending on what you actually want, the way you want to play. So this will impact your diplomacy to a large degree. It means that if you're playing chaotic, it means that factions are not going to be very friendly throughout in the whole galaxy. Whereas if you're playing on restless, you can still definitely make like diplomatic sort of relations with other players. Difficulty. Now this is another one that's interesting. So this is actually the difficulty of the gameplay. This alters the Empire's rates for various in-game factors relative to the player. So factors include colony income, corruption, research speed, mining rates, population growth, war weariness, weapons targeting, and countermeasures. So these are all aspects, depending on how far up this particular rung that you go, that will start to allow the AI to cheat with what it actually brings in against you. Also, when you go to hard or beyond, up through here, this will then mean that when it does bring another faction in next to you, there will be at least one faction that is the the mortal enemy of your faction, so of your race. And so it doesn't mean you start off at war. It's just that, like, if you're a human, you're most likely going to have a Boscaran that will be sort of close to you, or something like that. Something that's going to be a potential enemy that's not going to really like you. And so that's across the whole board. And it makes it interesting because it means that on hard or above, not only does the AI get a slight advantage in certain things, you're also going to have a slightly more difficult start. Because the game up until now, up until this particular change, you can actually roll, even if you're playing on hard or very hard or even extreme, you can roll having all friends around you and basically have a really sedate time. And so the idea is not to actually have that if you are playing on hard or above. So that's sort of why that one has sort of been placed in there. I'll just put that on hard for now. Research speed, and so this is actually just how fast research will occur in the galaxy, and this will actually impact you as well. And so this is actually something that is a bit more sort of global. So from very slow through to very fast. Again, if you're playing on the higher tech levels, you actually don't start with any other advantages other than just knowledge. And so it's very slow to actually start to go through the tech levels. You may want to push that up a little bit if you're starting on tech level 1 or beyond, just make it go fast. I still like it on normal, and it means that you're spending like, about 20 years to get a tech level at the very start. Eventually it catches up, but you can make that go to fast. This is research visibility. And so by default, it's only show the next project visible, or you can actually have all the projects visible, one of the two. And so this one just means that when you've researched one thing, so it just doesn't become overwhelming. It'll just show you what's next on the tree. Now, if you're a new player, you may want to play with all projects visible, because you may want to see, like you may sort of ask yourself, I wonder what would happen if what tech would I need to achieve something specifically. Now, another way of doing this is to still play with only next projects visible in your game. Save the game that you're playing, and then start another one with this one selected and have a look to see what you could do. And so you can sort of use that almost as a reference point to sort of have a look at the actual the technology because the research and technology in the game is extremely detailed, and there's a lot of choice in there as to which way you can actually go. And again, I'll be talking about that when we get into that aspect of the game as to which ones I would suggest that you look at getting and why, particularly as when you're first starting off in the game. But we'll get to that one. Research pathing. Now this is actually, you can either have fixed research paths, which is the default, which means that it doesn't change. There's a design for the actual game where certain texts will then lead on to other texts, which will then lead on to other texts. With random research paths, some of those linkages between different texts will disappear, which means that you can't get to a specific tech. So there will be some text when you play it each time that you may not have access to. Most of them will still be there, but there will be some of them that don't quite marry up. You can still eventually get them through tech trading, but predominantly it's going to be difficult for you if you do have that one on. But it means that every time you play it, you've got a random game. So I much prefer to have this one turned on personally. But again, for your first few games, you may want to keep the fixed research paths on, just so you can actually have stability with knowing sort of how you want to play the game. It will take you a few goes just to sort of get a bit of a feel for what everything actually does do. Allow tech trading on or off. In most games, I actually prefer to have this one turned off because I find it exploitive. I actually really like it in this game, so I leave it turned on, it's on by default. you have to have a pretty solid relationship with another faction to be able to trade for tech. And so it does take a fair bit to actually sort of get the trust levels up. And so so it means if you're playing a more diplomatic game, then eventually you're going to be able to trade for technology and sort of get tech that way. It's probably still a little bit easy, but I don't mind it. I used to hate it in a lot of other games because it also seemed that the AI would be trading tech amongst itself at your expense, whereas it doesn't feel like that in Distant Worlds 2. Anyway, that's the galaxy settings. So again, remember this is for the randomly generated aspect of the game at the top through here with Young and Level 1. This is not you, okay? So this is the actual rest of the galaxy. So this is just the randomly generated empires. Next is threats. And now these are divided into two different areas, pirates and space creatures. Now the pirates, at this point in time, they haven't really been fleshed out. It doesn't have the degree of complexity that eventually Distant Worlds 1 had. But Distant Worlds 1 started off with very, very rudimentary pirates, I think even more rudimentary than what we've got. But these are essentially, they can be beneficial to a degree, and they can also be a problem. So it's one of these things, the pirates starting on normal. One thing it does do, when you kill off pirates, your reputation goes up a little bit. So if you're playing as a human or an Ikaru or someone where reputation may be important for diplomacy, then killing off pirates can actually be a beneficial thing for you, and creatures as well. And so in this case, you can actually play if you're wanting to have no pirates. You don't have to worry about them, or very few, or you may have like normal but have them on weak or very weak if you're having a lot of troubles with them. And a lot of people report a lot of frustrations with what the pirates do. I will be having an episode on pirates and how to deal with them. I guess approaches that you may sort of want to take with pirates. And different factions will have different sort of criteria with that as well. Pirates always start off at a tech level above where you are, at least one tech level above, which makes them very, very difficult to contend with if you don't contend with them correctly. And so it is important to actually have a plan when you first start the game, any game, of how you're going to deal with the pirates when they actually do arrive. The pirate proximity to you, like average or distant or nearby, so that's just how close they're sort of going to be starting with you. It can be fun to try to sort of survive in an area where they've got very many pirate factions with them strong or very strong and nearby. Like it can make it really, really difficult. But if you're new to the game, don't do that. And if you are frustrated by it, by all means, flick them back to very few or none. If you just don't like them, just don't feel bad about that. Play the game your way, essentially. But there are ways to deal with the pirates. And I mean, they're not easy ways, but there are ways to deal with them. It's a good stepping stone into other aspects of the game. One thing with the pirates, I'll say this just now, which is why you may want to keep them on as well, is that if you can capture their ships can be then pulled apart for technology. Or if you even destroy them, you can actually then find technology in the components that are left in the debris in space. And so you can actually progress your technology through killing off pirate ships, but you just have to get to a point where you can kill them off. And so that's sort of, having them around can be beneficial, as I say. We'll go through that, though, in-game. Now, the next one down through here, pirates respawn. They can either respawn once they're destroyed, so they'll spawn in a new location somewhere else, or they stay dead. Now, respawning pirates is actually painful. Even if you don't mind playing against pirates, you're better off just allowing them to, or just having them stay dead. Once they've destroyed, they're gone, and that part of the galaxy is then free of pirates. So rather than having them respawn, as I say, I've tried that once, and I'll never do it again. It just wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun game because they just ended up randomly coming everywhere. So it was just annoying. Now, space creatures, a bit like pirates, this is sort of like how many that are going to be floating around. These are not difficult to contend with at all. You can avoid certain areas if there's space creatures there. By the way, there's like big hive ships which are massively powerful. These are not considered space creatures. They're like an end game event, or they're sort of in the game, but they're essentially going to be a game event that will happen or trigger at the when people actually find them. And these are incredibly difficult to kill off, but these are not space creatures. Space creatures are things like the Gravelixes, Ardalises, Vorticars, things like that, which when you're in game, you'll sort of, there's not very many types of them. There will be more, I guess, added with the future DLC, I would imagine, or even through modding or something. But these again are not difficult to contend with, so normal is fine for me. I would suggest that you just keep it on there. And most of your fleets will be able to handle these creatures very, very easily. Like, you don't need a lot of ships to actually sort of be able to handle these. The Vorticars are probably the most difficult of them to actually then handle. So that's that one. Colonization. We'll have a quick look at this one. This requires a little bit of explanation as to how things actually do work. So, now the colony prevalence. So this influences general quality of planets and moons in the galaxy, thus determining the number of potential colonies. Quality of planets is very, very important, and we'll get into that later on as well. So the more you sort of ramp this one up, the higher the percentage of good quality planets there will actually be. Now, it doesn't mean you can colonize everything. It just means that there's going to be more of potential colonizable planets in the galaxy, just a little bit. It's you don't notice it very much when you sort of do ramp this one up. But again, if you're wanting to, remember, the AI will have the same benefit as you. So, I just keep it on normal basically and just leave it that way. And I find that that's actually fairly comfortable. It's still difficult to colonize things, but the game is not a game where you're rushing to colonize, by the way. I should just point that out as well. Most games you're rushing to get areas of the map, not with distant worlds. A colony takes an awfully long time to develop up. It's a constant drain on your resources until you do get it developed. If you rush that in the early game too much, you're going to find that you're going to go broke and you're not going to be able to then play the game effectively. You're going to be always running out of money. You're not going to be able to build fleets. You're not going to be able to protect yourself. You'll essentially become a bit of a dead duck if you do go after too many colonies at the start. I try to only grab colonies at the start of the game where I know it's an area of space that I want to control in the late game. Otherwise, I just hold back until my finances are really, really under control. Again, I'll go through this in detail when we do the episode on colonies. But having colony prevalence may mean that you actually end up missing out on options as well if it's too abundant and you're going up against someone that can colonize very quickly, like the Tikans or the Ikaru, for example. Those sorts of factions can very easily expand, and so you've got to be careful with that. So again, if you're a new player, go on normal or abundant, I would say, and just sort of get used to it. But don't rush your colonies. The rushing colonies is a mistake. Independent colonies as well in through here. These are actually colonies that already exist with existing populations. These are interesting because they do a couple of things in the game at this point in time. They're actually a source of resources that you may not have access to. And so if you've got, for example, you've got independent colonies that are abundant, it means, or very abundant, you're going to find more of them around. And so if you are struggling for resources, they may trade with you and supply you with the resources that you actually are missing. So they do actually often have critical resources for sale. And so that's one aspect of them. They also can be taken over either through peaceful colonization or through invasion. And so you can actually get colonies that are already half established with an existing population of one of the 20-odd different factions in the game. There's only 7 of the 7 playable factions in the base game, 2 more in this current or in the new DLC, and then another 2 coming later in 2023. So there's actually there's going to be 11 different factions initially, like within this next year, and more then added over time with that as well. So just be aware that when however you're going to be playing, it may be that you go for more of an invasion style. But again, even with those colonies, you have to assimilate those colonies before they become productive, and that process of assimilation can take an awfully long time, and it can really drain your resources. So that's why, again, you don't rush into doing things. Now, if you can do it through peaceful means, they will be assimilated when they first start, or mostly assimilated when they first come across, which means that they will be productive right from the very, very start. This is why peaceful colonization is preferable to invasion if you can do it, but some factions just don't have the option to do that. Like if you're playing as the Boscara, which is sort of like the insectoid group, it's just not going to be really an option for anything other than other Boscara or other insectoids. So anyway, that's the independent colonies back in through there. This influence, the colony influence range. Now, what this is your how far out from the influence of each of your colonies the borders will extend in the game. And so it's important only really for stopping other empires from building inside your territory and also stopping you from building inside their territory. So if you have a very, very small, like a 25% colony influence range, it means the border is going to be really, really tight in. If you have a very broad one, it's going to be the empire, the borders are going to be expanded right out into space, where they essentially, it's going to be chewing up a lot of space until it comes up against another influence, and then there's like a bit of a play on the influence of the actual of what that range might be for that particular border. Now, borders. There is actually a bit of confusion as to how borders are, or there's a lack of understanding as to how borders are impacted. Borders come from the colony with the influence of every single colony. So the colonies themselves exert pressure into space based on the development level of the actual colony itself. So the more developed a colony is, the bigger a colony is, and so on and so forth, the more luxury goods are in a colony will then expand that border out. And so this is actually just a play on how far that expansion goes. I find the 100% is adequate. I don't never feel that I need to change it anywhere else. I find it works well at 100%. So again, I would advise not changing that one. But if you do want to play it around with that, then yeah, by all means, just change the influence range. That'll just change how far out it would mean that if you played at say 25%, there's going to be a lot of unclaimed territory, and it would mean that you need to then go and settle into different areas to then develop up planets and push the borders out more that way. There's another question that often gets asked is, what can I build to expand my borders? And this is another, I guess, a throwback to games like Stellaris and those sorts of games where you're trying to capture space through space stations, whatever else it might be. No impact at all. It all comes down to the development level of colonies that you control, and that's all that actually impacts the borders. So there may be at some point in time, there may be a way of impacting the borders through some sort of outpost or some sort of star base, or even like a component that's put into a star base, but not at this stage. So it really is only the development level of your colonies that impacts the borders. Again, I'll talk about that in more detail when we talk about how that works in the actual game and we're in game. The colonization range limit. Now, what this is actually how far away from the closest colony to a potential colony you actually are. So by default, it's 300 m, and which is a fair distance, 300 m. I actually prefer to play on 100 or 150 because it forces you to go to combat, and it means that you can't expand without actually doing invasions, pretty much, because it means that if it's on 300 m, which is it's hard because there's no measuring tool in the game to sort of designate what that is, but it's a fair distance. When we were looking at the clusters before, it's probably the difference between one cluster and the next cluster. It means you'd probably be able to settle anywhere within a neighbouring cluster, not just within the same cluster that you're actually in. So that's sort of where that one goes. If you're going back up to even sort of like this particular aspect, I don't know what the none does actually. Maybe that is 0. I don't know. Anyway, it looks like it may be, unless it just doesn't. It means it doesn't, like there's no limitation. But 10, like 1000 m would essentially be no limitation. But 300 m is some near. I'm not sure if that means 0 or no limitation. I'm assuming it's no limitation if it's on that end of the spectrum there. But these, as I say, the smaller this actually is, the more you've then got to think of another way to actually then go and colonize a planet that you may want. That, like if you've got like a 150 m selected and you find a planet that's around about 200 m, it means you're going to have to maybe go to another planet that is not really suitable and actually colonize that to then bounce across and grab the next planet that would then be in range after that. So there's those sorts of interesting things. Again, for your first games, just keep it on 300 m. That's the way the game is designed to be played. And it is comfortable, like it does allow you to sort of expand into different areas. By the way, with the influence range, a colony cannot go and settle one of your colonies without, like it can't peacefully colonize inside your territory. and you can't do the same either. So, but you can if you're at war. So if you're at war, you can do it. You can also do invasions. There may be independent colonies inside borders. They can still be invaded and taken over, and then you start to control the sectors that way as well. Okay, so next we come into your race. Now, there's a lot to discuss here, and I've already gone 40 minutes in, so I'm not going to actually discuss these here. My plan is to actually go and do a separate video on every single one of these, so I can then talk about what they're good at, what they're bad at, what their ship designs are like, what you may consider with their ship designs, strategies. So these will be fairly in-depth videos anyway on each of these. So, but in a very, very brief rundown, if you're trying to sort of play something fairly vanilla, then humans are a good choice because you're sort of familiar with them. So I know a lot of people like to play as the humans. I used to play with this one in Distant Worlds 1 because they were too vanilla, but they're actually quite good fun to play in this particular game. Other things you may want to consider would be the Actarians are a really, really nice faction to play. That's actually my favourite faction in the game. So I really like playing as these. These are an aquatic race, which are fairly easy to play to a large degree. Boscara are always going to be at war with everyone, so they can be fun, but they can be difficult to play. But usually humans are a good start for your first one. But I'll go through in depth as to what each of these do, what they're good at, what their ships are like, what to sort of aim for, I guess, in the technologies as well. And we'll just go through that with a separate episode for each one of these. All right, so we'll just go humans at this point in time. We'll just go to empire and government. Now, whatever you choose is going to come through with its most common style of government. Just have a bit of a look to sort of see what they've got. So humans have got democracy, feudalism, military dictatorship, monarchy, and republic. And these all have different abilities that come into the actual game. So, for example, democracy is going to give more population growth. In war, they're going to struggle with their war weariness. So they're going to have a real problem once they get into wars. The population is going to sort of turn against the government a little bit as the war progresses. And so the war weariness will go up. And if you're playing someone like the Boscarans, then it's going to be the opposite. They're going to be very accepting of their empire being at war. They still do get war weariness, but not at the same rate as for example, the democracy. If we go to, for example, feudalism, we can see there the war weariness reduction is the opposite. This one is very accepting of war weariness to actually then have that one as an example. But these are then less diplomatic. So the humans are interesting because you can really go wildly different with the way that they actually sort of then do work. So with democracy, I'll just leave it back there. This is actually the preferred human government type. But again, you can pick and choose exactly what you want. And there's so many different ones in the game as well. And again, I'll do an actual episode on the differences between the different government types, if you're interested in that as well. I'll probably do that when I do each actual one on the actual groups. Let's just leave it on democracy for now without going through too much detail. By all means, have a read through this and just see what's actually going on. Your starting situation next. Now, before, when we were looking at this screen through here, start a new game, galaxy settings, these were for the randomly generated AI that were coming in to fight you. This next one that we sort of end up with over here is actually what you're going to have with your system. And so if we wanted to, and I'll just go through what each of these actually are. So the home system, this is the favorability of your home system. Now, personally, I would love to see a few more options in between normal and trying and harsh, to be honest. There's just, these are, normal means that you've essentially got, there's going to be planets and resources in your home system that really do cover all your basic construction needs. So you won't have any issues, essentially. You'll be able to get your fuel from your home system. You'll be able to get all the building blocks. You'll have steel. You'll have should have silicon. Now, sometimes these will be a bit hidden for a little while until you actually sort of uncover them, but they will be there in your system if you go normal. Now, if you go agreeable, you're going to get even more. And of course, if you go excellent, you're going to get even more again. Now, I would suggest that you just stick on normal because it's still going to make you go outside of the system for your luxury goods. That you have to bring a lot of those in from outside, which means that you will then actually have trade lanes you'll need to protect as you go. And so normal is fine. Trying means that you've got a few of those resources that are critical will not be in your home system. Now, one of the troubles with trying and with harsh is even worse. Harsh means that you've got very, very few resources in your home system, and you have to then start to control other systems around you to bring those resources in, which is a very, very difficult game to play. So it can be very, very hard. Now, if you are playing on trying or harsh, I would strongly, strongly suggest that you play on young, because young will then give you knowledge of what's around you. And if you can't, for example, find a few of those little resources around you, actually I might explain that right now, just so you've got like a bit of a list. If you do play on trying or harsh, and again, if it's a new game, I'd suggest that you don't do it. But if you do play on trying or harsh, in fact, I might even show you. Let's start a game now, and I'll just quickly show you what I mean. If I go to trying, and I go to starting, for example, and so we're just literally starting off at pre-warp. Now, I won't know what's in my system at all because of where I actually am. If I go to tech level 0, I still don't even know if I'll know at this stage. But if we just go across, I'll just go and start the actual game up. And we'll have a bit of a look and see what we end up with. And I'll just sort of zip past this one. Now, all we know is pretty much what we have in here. So we know that we've got a trying system. We know that we've got an issue with what's around us. I'll just pause this. We don't know what's in here. This is unexplored. Everything is unexplored. So we don't know what resources we have in our home system. But most importantly, we actually don't know what resources we have around us either. And so it becomes, and it may be that you've got a critical resource that you don't have access to. And that's going to kill your game. Basically, if you cannot get access to either fuel or some of the basic building blocks, you won't get anywhere in the game. And that's just going to be frustrating. Even if you're sort of a good player with the game, that is a problem. So the thing I like to do is to not start on that system, like on that sort of level. I'll just go back out again. I'll just press escape and then go back to the main menu. And now it will remember what I had selected. So if I just go to start a new game and just go back through. So if I go back across where I've actually then got the trying system set up, if I go to young, it then has to go to level 1 as well. This is why I like to do young if I'm playing on trying or harsh. And I do like these games. Sorry, just got a bug flying around. This particular combination will mean if we go to across and get started again, we are. We'll just let this one start off, and you can see already we can start to sort of see what's around us a little bit. Now we still may only have one colony here, but that's actually okay. We'll just now pause that again. So we now have knowledge. So as we come back out, we can see, okay, we've got Caslon there. We've got some other sorts of, I don't know what that is. What is that one? That's Cozy and Crystals. We've got other resources across. There's steel back over this side. So we can actually now start to see things. And so we've got knowledge in around this region of space. Even though we've only got the one colony, we actually have knowledge of what's around us. And so even from here, you can sort of say, okay, look, what are my critical resources? And I'll tell you what they are right now. If you don't have these available in here, be prepared to start again. Click on resources. Again, I won't go and explain this too much, but have a quick look and click on carbonite. So the carbonite's over through here. Bang, we've got carbonite in this system, not in our home system. Click on silicon, can sometimes be a hard one. We can't find silicon, but I would assume we'll find that one, so I wouldn't be too concerned about silicon. We'll keep on scrolling down. Steel, we've actually already can see we've got like a lot of sources there. Polymer. We actually control a source of polymer. We've got one of two sources we already control. And so that will be our home world. So polymer is important. And Caslon is also important. We've actually got 3 sources, including one in our home system. This is a viable game, even though we've got one of the, in fact, if we have a look at all of these, if any of these show 0, so Osalia, this is something we don't have to worry about. It's a very rare production resource which we don't care about, but this is actually just if you're going to be playing this way. Silicon, we've got 0 sources. Necros stone, we've got 0 sources. This is used in weaponry. Silicon is actually used a lot But Necros Stone, we can get around that by just not using the weapons, but we will eventually find that as well. So I think that Silicon and Necros Stone we would eventually find. Emerald Crystal, again, used for weaponry. So the important ones really are, though, Carbonite, the Caslon and Polymer. They're the three. If you don't have, if one of those is missing, when you first start off playing like this, then you're going to have troubles. Now, it means that like Carbonite looks like we're going to have to sort of try to protect that from this location. We've only got like one source, which means that we will have to actually protect that one. Anyway, that's just if you're playing on trying or harsh, do that just to sort of double check. I hope that's helpful. I won't spend too much time with that, but because you wouldn't be playing on that unless you're used to the game. And so if you're new to the game, it's probably going to be a little bit confusing what I just did there. But if you're used to the game, if you're new to the game, don't do trying or harsh because it's going to make your game very, very difficult. Anyway, let's go back out and continue on. So just go back to the main menu and start a new game. I'll just go back across to where we were before I got distracted. So, trying system, don't turn it off normal if you're a new, or go either normal or above if you're a new player. You don't want to be going down to trying or harsh. This will make your life hard if you actually do that. It makes it hard because it takes time for the resources to get back to your homeworld. And it also creates a weakness that can be exploited by pirates or the enemy. So they can interrupt your supply lines much more easily, which makes it a more fun game to play. That's why I wish there was like a couple of settings just in between these two and really sort of flesh this out a little bit more. But this is what we've got at this stage. So I'm hopeful that at some point this will become a bit more of like a slider. Where you can sort of pick and choose exactly where you want to have that sort of degree of what you end up with. But if you've got normal, you've got literally everything. There's maybe some of the rarer construction resources won't be there, but in reality, if you play on normal, you're definitely going to end up with polymer and carbonite and silicon and Caslon. You may have to dig for it, but you will actually you know that you're going to have start with that in your home system. Now the expansion, very much like what we saw there before, where we've got sort of like starting back and through here. Now random is a starting size anywhere from a single colony to a mighty multi-sector giant. I don't know why you would choose that one. It's going to be sort of too wildly different than what the rest of the galaxy might be. But this one here, you've got like starting, so a single small colony. Young is 2 to 4. You saw in the last one we only started with 1. That's often the case when you do start with trying. If you start with normal, you're going to usually end up with like 2 or 3 colonies. The expanding will then go bigger again, exactly like what we saw there for the AI. The tech level we see through here again, it's again exactly the same. If we go to starting, we can actually then go to pre-warp or level 1, or level 0. Level 1, we can go, even with starting, we can go beyond this where we're actually technologically advanced, but we haven't actually explored anything yet. But I think young at level 1 is actually a fairly comfortable start if you are trying to at least play a little bit more established. So particularly if you're playing trying or harsh, definitely go young so that you've actually at least got knowledge. And then you've got the starting location. So in this case, depending on what you choose back at the very, very start, like if we just go all the way back, and for example, choose a ring with a dense center. Actually, if I choose this ring here, for example, the 2 rings, or I can even do this one here. So a dual ring with a dense center. If we then go back to that particular screen, you'll then sort of see that we actually have like the center, the inner ring, or the outer ring will be the starting locations for that particular start. Now, if I just go back again to what we had selected initially, which was just the classical spiral, and have a bit of a look. And so this one, we've got the deep core, we've got the outer core, and we've got the far regions. So it sort of ends up sort of like, and it won't always put you where you want to be. This is like a preference. It's saying, look, I prefer to be in this region of space, but the game, if it can't fit you in, it will just plop you anywhere else on the outside. So quite often, particularly if you've got like a lot of empires, you'll find that that you won't fit where you want it to be, and you'll be put on the outside. So always have a look where you are when you start a game and think, oh, it's not really where I want it to start, and just feel free to restart. It's very quick. Now, this is the one aspect in the game at this point in time in version 1.1.2.3, and it hasn't been like there since the start of the release of the game, but it will probably change at some point. This is the only aspect that isn't remembered when you actually start a new game. So if I start the outer core and go through and actually sort of go and start a game up, and then come back the next time to do it, it will go back to random. So that's the only aspect that of everything else in the whole start that you have to impact. So just be aware of that one. I'll just keep it on random anyway at this stage. So we'll just go next with which is the other empires. Now this is quite interesting, this particular screen here. So the first line up the top here is auto-generate starting empires, which is essentially just means randomly start them from those parameters we saw on about page 3 or 4 or whatever it was in this particular process. And we can go down to as few as a couple, I think. Actually, we can go 0, we're just on your own, which means you're going to win straight away. So that's the fastest way to win the game. But you can have like one empire that you're going for. The default is 12 in through this side as well, but you can go up to 20, I think, is the maximum. Yeah, 20 is the maximum. So that's what you can sort of auto-generate up to there. But the default is 12, which means, you know, there's a fair few empires that sort of in the galaxy when you do play it on this one. You also have starting empires. Now, these can be used additionally. You can turn this one off and then go on with these and replace the whole galaxy and build what you want with that. Or you can actually have that one on as well. Have like, let's just say you have like 9 auto-generated galaxies from the previous settings, and then you think, okay, look, I'm going to add in a few other empires in through here. And so when you actually add them in, you've got like the race, the tech level, the expansion, the proximity to you, the government type, the home system, and also the relation with you. And so I'll just go and I'll just put this up to say 11, just so we have one extra one through here. Now, the races that you have available to you are the whatever races you have installed. So you'll actually have them through there. There is discussion that there may be other ways of specifying things like friends or enemies or insectoids or, you know, humanoids, things like that. So there may be another way of getting even more classifications through these, where they sort of pick amongst the groups of the actual units that are actually in here. And so so that one's there, but random, like it can be anything, but you can sort of often, if you're going to be playing as a human and you're thinking, okay, look, I really want to have another human nearby, so I've got like an ally, potential ally, we can do that. We can go human. They're starting tech level. We're on tech level 1. Let's make them tech level 1 as well. The expansion, let's make them young like us as well. Proximity, we'll make them nearby to us. The government type. Now, we're a democracy. Now, we can actually have the humans with any of the different sorts of government types. These are all the different government types in the game at this point in time. So we'll just make them a democracy as well, just like us. And that would mean that we have a very strong diplomatic sort of relationship with a neighbour. And the home system, again, just normal. They can be agreeable if you want to have them sort of even with more stuff. So you can sort of set up pretty much, you can define what you want to have built in around you. Relation level, again, you've got all these different sorts of things. Now, this is one thing we haven't really spoken about, even when I was doing the comparison with other games. Often people sort of say, well, what's diplomacy like? These are the different sorts of diplomatic relationships you can have. So not met basically means that you don't know where they are. None means that you've actually met, but you don't actually have any relationship. Protection agreements, you've got restricted trade agreements, limited trade agreements, non-aggression treaties, free trade agreements, territory map sharing, migration treaties, exploration in territory, mining rights, galaxy map sharing, military refueling, research agreements, intelligence sharing, operations map sharing, defence pact, or at war. And so depending on how you want to sort of start the game up, it may be that you go in and say, okay, look, I just want to have a defence pact with these other people right from the very, very start, which means that you would then know them, and that would be your relationship with them. And you may think, okay, look, if I've got the humans, let's go and grab another couple and give ourselves some enemies. And so it may be that you think, okay, look, let's add a new empire in through here. We'll make this one Boscara. We'll make it level 1. We'll make it young. We'll make it also nearby. We'll make its government type a hive mind, which is what they actually tend to use, normal, and we'll start a foot war with us in through this side, for example. You can add another one as well if you wanted to, like another one that may be another enemy, so Mortalan, level 1. Now this will be a difficult start, I've got to say, so don't do this if you're a new player, but this is the sort of thing that you can actually then go and do. Now the Mortalans will probably be more like to be either feudalism or monarchy or something like this. Military dictatorship probably would be more typical for them, normal, and war in there as well. So we'd start off with 2 wars, which would not be good for us. This would be a very, very hard start. But we would actually have a friend nearby as well. So this is the sort of thing that you can actually then go and establish. One thing I like to do is to have somebody that may be a bigger, so maybe it's an expanding or even a mature, that is actually distant from us. So we haven't found it yet, and we have not met, and it will then sort of build up in another part of the galaxy until we're actually sort of in the middle of the game, and then suddenly we've got to contend with somebody that is one thing you can do here is to go to something like Way of Darkness, which is actually going to make them evil, a big evil empire with a lot of advantages to play as this particular government type. And so this would be like having somebody in the game that ends up growing very, very strong at on the other end of the galaxy from you, and then eventually you're going to meet them. And so what's going to happen then, you don't know. And so you can set all sorts of different scenarios up in here. And I'm hoping at some point, again, there's a way that you can actually save these. But at this point in time, that will be remembered, like if we played that one for the next one. But let's just get rid of these. We'll just turn that one off and make that one go back up to 12. This is certainly for your first games. Just leave that one on. But there is capacity to build a narrative before you even start, just with this particular empire, the way that this actually does work in through here. So we'll just go to victory conditions next, which is pretty much the last screen. Now, these need to be explained in game, so I'll leave these on by default, but these are essentially, there's different ways of achieving victory, and you can actually tweak the game a lot with the way that you do this. Wow, we just hit an hour for this particular episode. This is quite a detailed one. I'm glad I did the little 10-second start at the start. So for those of you still watching, thank you. But I think a lot of you will have already gone by now. The territory and through here, these are the different ways of winning the game. And so you can tweak what percentage of the actual overall aspect of what you're doing will actually then impact what's going on. So territory is how much territory you control in space. Population is how much of the population of the planets you control. And economy is how much money you're generating through what you're doing. And so you can actually have these, either you can turn these off if you don't want these to have any bearing at all on the actual victory conditions. So you can actually sort of tweak these, or you can actually change also the actual number. And through here is this is essentially, I think this is like a weighting. So select a combination of territory, population, economy, or race-specific victory conditions at the left. Then select the percentage victory threshold. This is the portion of the selected victory conditions that must be met for victory. Now that's actually different to what we're seeing through here. I think this is sort of like the amounts that can be multiplied with what you're actually then doing. And I think it may be 75% of the galaxy that you control will then give you like the full gamut of what you can then do with the territory. But to get a victory threshold, you've also got the race victory conditions. Every single race in the game has got a different set of criteria. For the Boscarans, it'll be to kill the most enemy troops, to kill the most enemy ships, kill the most enemy bases, that sort of stuff. So every single one of them has got like a different criteria. Some of them will be to have the most non-aggression pacts in the galaxy, things along those sorts of lines. And so then it comes down to the actual, like, how far along what do you need to achieve to actually win the game. And so 40% is fairly achievable, fairly easy. 70% means you've got to have to play a lot of the game to be able to actually sort of reach that one there. Now, what you can do, you can also have a start date in years when this applies. You may sort of think, okay, look, I really need it to wait 100 years and then we'll see where we are. So you could actually go back to 40% and turn on the start date and change that one to like 100. You can just type in 100 years. So after 100 years, it will then check to see who's reached the 40%, or it might be sort of like 50 years or even 30 years, something like that. Probably the minimum, it showed there 0. Really, the minimum should be around about 30, I think. It would take that sort of long to really sort of play out a game. So if you're going to be playing with that one, I would not leave it on 0, because you can find that some players will actually get victory very, very quickly if it's down as low as 40%. I'll just leave that one back where it is. And similarly, so I think the default here should be 20 or 30. And I think that the time limit, this is actually to see who's going to win after a certain amount of time. 10 years is way, way, way too short to actually play the game. So I would be having this at least 50 or more years in through there, if that was the default as well. So I haven't actually passed it on as feedback But I do feel that is something that should be in the game as a much higher level than what is actually displayed there at 0 and 10. Anyway, that's sort of, again, one of those things. If you do play with them turned on, at least you'll then know when you hit 50 years in, whoever's winning at that point will actually then win the game. So this then gives you a definite way of actually finishing the game within a set period of time, rather than actually just letting the game run forward. Now, I don't know anyone who plays the game with these turned on. It's good that they're there, but no one seems to do it. They tend to just leave it on the 70% or thereabouts and then just let the game play forward. And quite often you play the game until you basically not know that you can't lose anymore, and then at that point you tend to sort of finish off anyway. But I also know other players who just enjoy watching their empire grow, and that's fine as well. Everyone's got a different way of playing the game, and it's all good. It's all good. So, and I think even when you actually hit the victory conditions, you can still actually play on if you're wanting to. So I don't think it matters that much. It just means that technically you've actually hit the victory condition there. Now you've got the different story events. General story events down through here are, these are generic story events that happen. It means that there's going to be sort of like ship graveyards or debris fields in space. There's going to be certain things that just randomly generated and around in space. They're not going to be part of a particular narrative, but they will be randomly generated. These are quite cool, so I do like to have these turned on myself. The race-specific story events are very much scripted. They always are the same sort of style, and so they're good the first time you play a faction because it will almost give you like a flavour of how the faction can be played. So you maybe want to keep it on 1 or 2 times, get a feel for it, but I then turn them off because they're always the same. So, which is exactly why, the reason I love Distant Worlds is because it's so random every time you play it, and so I don't like these personally, so I turn them off. But each faction does have its own story that does sort of develop over time, and the choices you make do impact that story. So there is a bit of replay value there, but not much with that particular story event. So that's why I turn them off. But look, they're great in terms of getting a feel for the for your faction, like, you know, what's important to you, how that faction is designed to be played, and so on and so forth. But it is a constraint in the game, and it also is something that is, as I say, is always the same essentially. So it sort of, for me, it becomes, it gets a little bit tiring fairly quickly. So I just keep them turned off. Then the colony events are random events that happen at colonies. These can be tsunamis or anything else that may sort of occur in through there as well. And so that's actually something I leave on as well, because that has minimal bearing on the game, but it does impact, you know, planet quality for a little while, things like that. So I tend to just leave that one there. And then really you just click on this button and you're actually into the game with whatever settings you have established. It's a very, very cool game. You can see there's a lot to consider when you do, before you even start a game. And when we get started, we sort of go back in. You can see this one we've actually started with a couple of colonies. So there's our continental world at the very, very start, and we're into it. And so I'll just pause again. I tend to pause whenever I do come into the game. I'm also hopeful at some point that the game will automatically have an option to start paused rather than always just running as soon as you actually get started, because I do tend to like to do things before I let the game run away with stuff, because usually I'm playing on a harder mode and I've got to be careful with my resources. But anyway, that's information for another episode. Anyway, guys, we're going to leave it there. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been helpful. First and foremost, I know it's taken an awfully long time to get to this point and actually get the game sort of started, but I hope that this gives you a more rounded out feel for what's important for you. And again, play the game your way. It is not I'm going to keep on saying this time and time again. It is not a game that you're trying to min-max. It's a game that you just try to let the story develop, and so play it where you're not putting pressure on yourself to actually sort of do what you need to do, unless you want to, of course, unless you want to, and you can play it whichever way you like. Thanks for watching, guys. I will leave it here, and I'll catch you in the next episode.